Welcome to Self-Represented in Family Court, the only podcast you need if you're feeling lost, stuck, or overwhelmed in family court. At Self-Represented, we don't waste time discussing the law like all the other podcasts. We focus on what really matters in your divorce or custody case. That's strategy. With your host, Tracey Bee, former family law attorney turned pro se family court strategist.
Hi, it's Tracey Bee, and you're listening to another episode of Self-Represented in Family Court. So, today I wanted to take some time to talk to you all about something that comes up quite often. As many of you know, I've had groups, I've gone live, doing Q&As, workshops, social media posts, you name it. Why I bring that up? Because a lot of times I get to see exactly where a lot of people are, exactly what a lot of people are dealing with, exactly what is bringing the most agita, the most stress, the most overwhelm in your divorce and or custody case. And a lot of times, oftentimes, more often than not, the problem with your case unfolding the way it is has to do with the way you are presenting it and or positioning it. So that's what this episode is about. Why your case is unfolding the way it is and why that matters. So I really want to take this time to talk about this because I often see cases heading in a direction that is not necessarily aligned with their objectives. Actually, a lot of times, the direction the case is going has little to do with how strong their evidence is, how legitimate their arguments are, even how organized their case is. It's not. A lot of it is the positioning and the presentation of it. And you say, Tracey, what's the difference? Well, the difference is when you take time, when you really take time to understand every single layer, every single angle, every single direction of everything that happens or is happening in your case, you kind of sort of start to see patterns. You start to recognize things that happen continuously or repeatedly. You even start to anticipate certain things happening as a result of something else. Yeah, it's possible. It really is possible. I can assure you, I'm not making this up. So what does that have to do with you? Well, it has everything to do with you, especially if you're in a spot where you don't understand something, you don't quite get why the attorney is doing or not doing something you think should be done or not be done. You don't quite get why the judge keeps ignoring violations, ignoring repeated malfeasance on the part of the other party. You don't quite understand how the other party can continue to withhold, to deceive, to lie, and the case just moves along or not. There's a myriad of things. There's always something going on in your case. And there's always so much going on in your case. There's always so many layers. You'll hear me talk about layers often because there's so many layers. There's always so many angles. There's always so many objectives and motives that overlap. They're not all yours either. When people say to me, they ask me questions about what's going on in their case or why this is happening or why this isn't happening, and they're only telling me their side, they're only giving me their side, I usually give them answers like, well, it depends, or well, I wouldn't know that, or well, I would need so much more information. I need time to talk to you. And I'm not just making that up. I wouldn't be just making that up. I really need that because there's so many angles. There's so many layers. There's so many directions. I mean, it's not just the opposing party or opposing counsel. It's their motives, right? It's their, other things they have going on in their lives that tend to overlap or somehow have an impact on what's going on in your case. The same for you. You might be in family court with your divorce and or custody case, but then that case alone has collateral impacts on your work, your school, your home life, your finances, your health, your mental. I mean, it just goes on and on. And so you can't ignore those. You can't ignore those for yourself, but you can't ignore those for the other party or the opposing counsel or the judge or other key players, because doing that, it doesn't serve you any purpose. That's where you're overlooking the importance of positioning and or presenting your case in the way where you've taken into account all of those things. Because honestly, your specific judge can be pro 50-50, can be pro mom or pro dad, can't be anti high conflict. But if something else or someone else's objectives or agenda or motives or angles or actions or behaviors or patterns has an impact on your judge, then it sort of, misdirects or gets the judge's propensity to rule in a certain way kind of off track, if you understand what I mean. And so it's important for you to understand to look at everything through a microscope. Doesn't mean you need to act on everything, but you need to have a clear understanding. You cannot present or position your case if you don't take into account everything that has an impact on your case. So you say to me, Tracey, come on, this is impossible. Who can possibly do that? Who has time? Who has energy? Who has resources? Well, you do, especially if there's so much at stake. It's not, I do it all the time. I do it with my clients all the time. Just having a few conversations with them, I can help them identify things that they might not have thought about. And the longer we work together, the easier it becomes for them to sort of learn to see those things as having an influence or an impact on the overall outcome of their case. So even how their case moves along. The same thing for you. It's not impossible. In fact, it's a must. It's absolutely a must. You absolutely need to understand that presenting and positioning your case is the key to getting the outcome that you want. So, why is your case unfolding the way it is? Because you tend to think, yes, that you don't have time, you don't have resources, you don't have the ability or the capability to take into account every single thing or every layer, every angle, every direction of everything that impacts your case. And hey, it is your case. It's entirely up to you. But the sooner you get a hold of an understanding of all of those key players, all of their own agendas and motives and behaviors and patterns, the sooner and the easier it will be for you to position yourself and your case in the way that's going to increase your chances of success. So let's talk about some specific key points. Number one, what you see on the surface is rarely what it is. So you may think, and I hear this a lot, hey, the judge ruled in the other party's favor because they wouldn't let me present my evidence, even though I had so much evidence and it was so good and it was so persuasive and it was so on point. Well, the judge might not have, and then a lot of times people will think, oh, the judge was biased against me and in favor of the other party by them doing that. And honestly, that's not always the case. Honestly, a lot of times that's not the case at all. Having 1,500 pages of evidence or 20 hours of recordings, audio or video, or having a truckload of photographs is not necessarily a surefire way. It's not a silver bullet. It's just not. There's no way to guarantee your judge is going to see or hear any of that. And so the judge not seeing or hearing any of that might not have persuaded them either way. It could have been that what you had was inadmissible, in proper format, or irrelevant, or all three. And so had you had admissible, relevant evidence that was in the proper format, the judge might have listened or heard exactly what you brought in. And then your whole view of that judge would be different. You wouldn't think of them as pro mom or pro dad or pro 50-50 or anti whatever it is. You wouldn't do that. So a lot of times what you see on the surface is not what it is. And I am habitually, continuously, incessantly trying to enlighten people about that. A lot of times people will say, hey, it's not fair what happened to me in court today or yesterday or last week, because let me tell you why. And I'm looking or I'm listening and I'm hearing and I'm seeing it and I'm like, okay, that has nothing to do with nothing. But because you don't know, you're unclear, you're overwhelmed, you're confused, you're going to think that it is what you think it is. A lot of times it's just not. That's not what it is. Another point, a lot of times people will tell you what you want to hear. Lawyers, other litigants, other parents, other coaches, they will tell you what you want to hear. And I am not a fan of that. I think telling somebody what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear only sets them up for failure. And I can't lie to you. A lot of times I get a lot of flack. I get a lot of heat because I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. And a lot of people are just not ready to accept that and embrace that. And I understand when you're in a high contentious, high conflict divorce or custody case and you're already getting beat down by the other party or opposing counsel or the judge or just the process itself, you do want someone or something to be a little bit more sympathetic or empathetic to what you're going through. I totally get it. But it doesn't justify, to me, in my eyes, it just doesn't justify someone telling you what you want to hear just to make you feel better or to assuage you. Yes, you still need to hear what you need to hear. And that is that sometimes you expecting 50-50 or you expecting sole custody or you expecting supervised visits or you expecting 50% of the marital assets or you're expecting alimony, you're expecting those things does not make it so. You're expecting those things, a lawyer telling you that you can get those things, or other non-lawyers or other divorce professionals telling you that you are entitled to those things does not make it a fact. Being entitled and actually getting a judge to do any of those things is not the same thing. And so I am more inclined to say, hey, listen, the law might say this, but in reality, you may not wind up with any of those things because there's so many other factors that come into play. And I'm sorry that I am just a straight shooter. I make no apologies for that. I'm sorry. I take that back. I'm not sorry. I make no excuses for that. I am a straight shooter. I think a lot of people need to hear what they need to hear and not hear what they want to hear. Another point is a lot of people think fairness should prevail. Oh, it's not fair that the judge did this, or it's not fair that opposing counsel did this, or it's not fair that the other party gets to do this, or it's not fair. Fairness has no place in family court, period. It just doesn't. If you're looking for fairness, that's not the place to be. Maybe try to resolve your case in mediation or using, some other third-party professional to help you resolve things without going to court. But going to court, taking your case the court route is not about fairness. Get that out of your head. So let's talk about, now that we've discussed those, let's talk about the things that are usually moving or stalling. The first thing is, what's moving or stalling your case could be you, your mindset, your beliefs, your values, your actions, your behaviors, your thought process. The list goes on. You. Yes, I know family court is a circus. It's the Twilight Zone. It's a train wreck. I know that. I've been in it for 20 plus years. I know that. But it does not negate the fact that you have a lot of input. You have a lot of influence. You should take a lot of responsibility for exactly the way your case is moving and or not moving. The choices you make, the decisions you make, the moves you make are yours. Whether you listen to someone or not, whether you're being advised or not, whether you're being supported or guided, At the end of the day, the decision is yours to make. And if you're making decisions that are not based on being fully informed, not taking into account all those angles and layers and directions of all the key players, or if you're making decisions out of fear, out of doubt, out of desperation, or if you're making moves because you are forced to react, or if you're emotional, or if you're seeking vengeance, again, it rests with you. It stops with you. It starts and stops with you. How about the timing? The timing of what you do or not do also has an impact on whether your case moves along or not. Timing is critical. A lot of people, right, wrong, or indifferent, have very little to no patience when it comes to family court. I hear so many people come to me and say to me, hey, nothing has been happening in the last 6 months and I want 50-50, or I want joint custody, or I want this. And I will say to them, well, right now your case is scheduled for a status conference or it's scheduled for hearing. Just because nothing's happened up until this point doesn't mean what you're asking for won't happen. It's a waiting game. And yes, sometimes the delays are unjustified, but sometimes they are. Sometimes they are justified. Sometimes, the court, the logistics of the judge, the courtroom, the parties involved, it could be justified. Who knows? So timing, not just the time, but the timing of filing motions, of responding to motions, of seeking other measures, filing a police report or following up with a doctor or getting mental health attention. Timing those things can be critical. It can be very tricky too, though, but it can be critical. How do you know when to time something? Well, that actually takes skill. It does. It takes skill, and it takes being very strategic. When you're looking to map out when your timing of filing a motion or a petition or whatever it is you're deciding whether to do or not do, a lot of times when you just explore strategy, when you look at your game plan and you refresh your memory as to what your overall outcome is you're seeking, what the weaknesses and strengths are, what resources are available, what the other party's position is. When you look at it from that perspective, it gets easier. Nothing should be looked at in a vacuum in your case. If you're in family court, there's no such thing as an isolated incident or an isolated motion or isolated petition or nothing's isolated. Nothing. Everything is contextual. Everything is a part of a bigger picture. And so every decision, every move you make, including timing things, should be thought out with respect to the bigger picture. That's important. That's incredibly important. And then the other thing is actually your narrative. What story are you telling? Why? What's the story you're telling to the court and why? Not your story. Tailor your story to the interests of the court. Tell your story with the court's preferences, the court's concerns, the court's motives in mind. If you can take your story and shift it to the way the court would actually be inclined to hear or listen or read it and understand it and agree with it, you have a much better chance of positioning and presenting the best, strongest case to get exactly what you're attempting to accomplish. Try it out. Try it out and see. I challenge you. So, those 3 things actually are important. They're not easy. It takes practice. It takes attention. It takes work. But hey, you're up for it, aren't you? Yes, I know you are. There are consequences to not doing these things. There are consequences to not shifting your story or not timing your next move properly or not taking into account the responsibility and accountability that you have. There are consequences. And sometimes you cannot come back from those consequences. Some consequences can be rectified, or over time they become moot and you can go back and revisit. But there are times when consequences are long term. They have a much more impact, deeper impact in the long run than others. So you need to, when you're actually in that stage where you're deciding, where you're choosing, where you're mapping out, you need to always think about the potential consequences and what you can and cannot live with, what your moves will be if any of those consequences play themselves out. You need to have a plan for that as well. I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Tracey, oh my God, you're making it sound like going back to school and preparing for major exams, all this work you expect me to do. But hey, if it's your kids at stake or your financial future at stake or whatever it is, isn't it worth it? I think so. So what you need to be paying attention to, you need to be watching for patterns. You need to be watching for behaviors. You need to be watching for predicaments and personal situations, circumstances. You need to be watching for preferences. You need to be watching for anything you think will have an impact on your case. You need to take responsibility. You need to be accountable. You need to have that story straight, and you need to be mindful of timing things that you plan to do or not do. So we started with the question, hey, how did my case get here? What happened? Well, again, it's a matter of presenting and positioning your case for the win. Come on, you can do it. I know you can. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I actually work with people on doing exactly this in my strategy sessions, my 1-hour strategy sessions. These strategy sessions are incredibly helpful. I've helped thousands in these strategy sessions. I've helped thousands people come up with a game plan that helps them map out exactly what it is they wish to accomplish and helps them come up with the steps they need to take to do that. That's everything from their story and tailoring those stories. That means everything about making better choices, doing the research and the legwork to make sure they understand and are fully aware of all the things that will impact the overall case and the outcome. That means actually timing things and making better decisions and making choices based on the overall case instead of making decisions out of emotion or as if it's a one-time event, as if things are not part of a bigger picture, not part of a whole. It means actually picking apart everything you think, everything you can imagine that's going to affect the overall outcome of the case. That's what we do in the strategy sessions. That's exactly what we do. And I have yet to have anybody not come back and say to me, hey, I never thought about that. I never thought that would have an impact on my case. Wow, you just opened my eyes to so many things no lawyers ever told me or explained to me. I never would have understood this. I've been listening, watching, reading, and nothing has been as straightforward and as clear and as advantageous as talking to you, Tracey. And if they have said anything else, I haven't heard it. So if you want that to be you, if you want to join the ranks of those who've had those great revelations and epiphanies in their cases, feel free to schedule a 1-hour strategy session. The link is in the show notes, and we can start with your case today or tomorrow. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in. Take care.
If you're having an active family court case and something already feels off, you need to identify where your case is seriously exposed. Schedule a strategy session now so we can shield your case from more damage. You can't afford to keep guessing. It's costing you way too much.